Focus on Gauteng for a moment. COVID-19 leaving the country with a legacy of unemployment. That's why it needs the same emergency response as we saw during the pandemic. That's the word from the Gauteng Premier, David Makhura, at his State of the Province address today.
We are indeed winning the battle against COVID-19, particularly because it is more contained. And scientists are saying it could soon become just endemic, moving from a pandemic to just being endemic. In this context, honorable members, we are boldly shifting our main focus and principal energy to tackle the unemployment through economic recovery and reconstruction. And it is this unemployment which has become critically something that requires an emergency response, and the kind of response that we gave to COVID-19. After so much death and so much destruction with regard to lives and livelihoods, it is time to rebuild, and we must do so with the greatest sense of urgency, with the greatest sense of single-mindedness and coordination demonstrated during our emergency response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Our reporter Pelane Phakgadi was at that State of the Province address in Brixton in Joburg. He joins us now in our studio. Pelane, good afternoon to you. A focus today on crime from the Gauteng Premier. What's he promising?
Well, he's promising that there should be new recruits into the force. He feels that there is a lot of work that can still be done, but in partnership with the so-called CPFs and as well as other people who could be volunteering to come through and patrol not only the cities but the townships as well. So he was talking about people who had been trained to be part of these particular activities when they do go ahead. But I think that was the important part about the crime also spilled up into the PPEs and about the role of which the state and his office in particular will be playing to try and ensure that they consider some of the graft maladministration and as well as charges for the NPA's recommendations. You do know that there have been recommendations. There have been talks about people having that they should go through to the crimes court. But Stephen, it has not been the case even to date. The PPE scandal has rocked South Africa, especially during the height of COVID-19. And it was only prudent that he will come through to say that this is what we have done, and we have put this or so many people through the criminal cases, or we have opened cases, and that was never the case.
And then also, I mean, unemployment high everywhere, but also a major problem in Gauteng.
Such a major problem, not only in Gauteng, of course, everywhere, as you've rightly put it, but he said that there is the agricultural focus that will now be coming through. The cannabis sector will now also have some sort of leeway.
He wants to compete with the Eastern Cape on cannabis.
Yes, he says that there's already been sites that have been identified to try and ensure that they assist people who have interest in cannabis, and in particular as well as agriculture, calling on women and young people in particular, even persons with disabilities, to come through and assist the government in ensuring that they roll out agricultural programs to try and ease out the issue of unemployment, but in particular as well SMMEs to be supported.
We've been talking, of course, about the Charlotte Makhura Hospital, speaking to one of the people who runs that hospital just a moment ago. Yeah. There was the press conference last week. Did he reference that in his speech? This is turning into a major issue in Gauteng.
Well, the reference that I heard was to talk about how much the DID seems to have been a disappointment, and therefore removing some elements from it as a department, meaning that as far as infrastructure for hospitals and as well as for schools, those particular departments themselves, the education as well as the health departments may have in the near future their own rights to look at their own infrastructure and as well as taking care of them. So there will be no need to go to the infrastructure development department to try and say there's a leak or there's this, please come and fix it. They'll have an opportunity to fix them themselves, and that was such an element. And the EFF came out very strongly to say that if there was a weakness that he has noted, therefore the MEC should be fired.
Pelane, it's a very interesting political situation in Gauteng, because you've got the provincial leader, David Makhura, being Premier for two terms. He was the provincial secretary for 10 years before that. There have been reports that he may be destined for national office, won't run again for another term as leader of the Gauteng ANC. I mean, some of that politics is beginning to swirl a little bit in that province. It's beginning to swirl a little bit, and I think there was also an interesting topic to talk about, that the African National Congress is going to the provincial conference here in Gauteng. Well, he
he be the one to give the State of the Province address next year? Well, only if there is a united Gauteng. I'm sure he'll be led to finish his 2-year tenure at least until 2024. But if that's not the case, then politics will be at play, and we might not see him next year giving that particular address. Very interesting politics coming into power, and we do know that there is the VAL so-called brigade that is coming through. They have their own interest as to say who should be taking over, and he will not be standing for that. But we do know that others are already saying that Panyaza Lesufi should ascend from the deputy position of chairpersonship. All that, I'm sure, will be in play in regional conferences and the provincial conferences coming along.
Pelane Phakgadi, thanks very much indeed. A reporter here at Newzroom Afrika.